as we sunset on the lake. One of the last few days of ice on Bojavatnet Jeune. You can hear the geese. Beautiful sky. You can hear the water and the ice cracking. And in just 1 week, this will be transformed as the snow is gone and spring arrives. Welcome to the wonderful forests around me. They are full of biodiversity, red list biodiversity, peace and tranquility, beautiful trees. But it's all under attack. So, this is today, and welcome to the future. You probably see behind me absolute devastation. Been really shocked at how big this wind farm has become. I mean, it is just jaw-dropping. And this is just a little section. There are 33 of these spread across the area. The biggest turbines in the world. The GE Cypress, built, as we're claiming, illegally, exploiting the environmental permits, lying. They're not going to deliver any climate change benefit. It's crazy. We've got to look for beauty. We have to be creative, we have to be creators and contributors and not destroyers and consumers. That's not the way it should work. This is not a future that I think we should be proud of. This isn't progress. This is the opposite of progress. This is what happens when parasites destroy their host. 8 billion people is not too many people. Too many people doing the wrong things. If we had 8 billion people creating and contributing, the planet would be fixed in a second.
As a filmmaker, I'm receiving stories on a daily basis. From gardeners, farmers or individuals, we're all working with and in nature. Finding innovative ways in order to create the balance we need to simply survive and protect. They're all sending me their view how we can contribute to our planet and at the same time leading a rich and fulfilled life. And that's the complexity of today, right? Because to be honest, we're all fed by the monster of wild uncertainty driven by politics and institutional fear. Where the holistic puzzle of life has become a psychedelic artwork, which no one understands anymore. Unless you're on drugs. Which in some extent I believe we are. But this story somehow was different. So I asked him for more details.
Everyone seems to start with their credentials on these types of videos. Alexander Pohl, I'm in my almost mid-40s.
I studied civil and environmental engineering, been fascinated by engineering and the environment. So that was all about building infrastructure to fix the planet's problems. I spent 4 months in Grenada doing my thesis on waste management and rubbish on little islands in the Caribbean. I had a year off so I could travel. I met a girl, had a romance, ended up getting married. And then I came back to London, and that sort of starts my story in London. And I spent 5 years with KPMG doing all types of things. I did a lot of sustainability and the early days of something called the Clean Development Mechanism. This was the early days of climate change. So this is 20 years ago. Climate change is a thing. People are starting to care about it. And the United Nations set up a program with hundreds, if not billions of dollars to incentivize companies to reduce emissions. And we helped them. We did the auditing, we did the validation, and it turns out it was all corrupt. I worked with the biggest companies, BP, Shell, Ineos, Hitachi. When we helped them greenwash some of them.
What do you mean by greenwashing?
I do a little bit of good that I talk a lot about, and then that hides, it's like an iceberg. I have a green tipped iceberg with everything under the water being black. We helped a lot around auditing because, a lot of people rely on numbers to make decisions. This is a zero and ones world. And if you have a company like KPMG saying the numbers are good, well, even if the numbers aren't good, people still believe that they're good. And an auditing firm puts so many caveats. Why do companies go bankrupt when they've been audited? Well, it's because there are so many caveats that say, well, based on the information we saw, it looks okay. And it's always, it looks okay. It's not, it is okay. And that then allowed this underworld and undercurrents of, I will pay you some money to say this looks okay. You will not be held account, but you can do that across financial numbers, climate change numbers, amounts of pollution. I talk a lot about the little bit of good I do so that everyone is distracted from all of the bad. It was all about money. So I said, okay, well, who controls the money in the world? Well, it's the banks. So I said, okay, well, I need to go to a bank. And so I found a bank, a job looking at risk, and it was at HSBC, which prides itself on being one of the most sustainable banks in the world.
That green finance provides a once-in-a-generation opportunity or a once-in-a-multi-generation opportunity to, at the same time, be bankers and doing the right thing.
So I did hundreds of millions of lending to big projects, power stations fueled by trees, big wind farms, big solar farms. And I thought, we're good. But the whole time things started feeling funny. It was like a glitch. I was like, well, this doesn't feel right. These people are doing these big projects, making lots of money, but they're not sustainable. These are some of the most ego-driven monsters. There's a lot of dark stuff in these companies' supply chains. It's all about money. And they were using the sustainability agenda just as another tool, another stick to beat their suppliers with. So there was nothing about nobly saving the world. It was about more profit. And at that point, I was like, this is a broken system.
Yeah.
Then I got fed up. Then I said, enough is enough. I need to do something different. This is killing me. And I decided I was going to leave. I looked at places like New Zealand. Beautiful place, good for sustainability, but it's already been bought up by Chinese and Silicon Valley billionaires. Then I looked at Chile and Patagonia, politically unstable. Then I looked at Canada, too close to the US, and the industrialization of nature is pretty advanced there. Then there's Russia, didn't really work, and I was left with Sweden. Sweden has the word Eden in it. I was looking for my own Eden, where I could do eco-village or permaculture, agroforestry, grow your own food, live sustainably, and this fit the bill.
It feels so good to be safe in nature and to be in a place where I feel that I can breathe fresh air. It's just so good. I want to get away. I want to be free. And here is the waterfall. Wow. Here we go. Absolutely incredible, double, complete rainbow. Baby reindeer. Isn't that incredible? One of the greatest things about being out here in Sweden is the fact that I'm in the country and it's beautiful and it's natural and fresh air. Thinking about our individual purpose. And my purpose for the moment is to get gold. So today's conversation in the cold with Alexander. Yeah, so what's gonna come next? First thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna spend a lot more time with people. I need to balance my me time with the we time and making sure that we time is constructive time. So helping make other people's lives better, help make my own life better, help create, to build, to share. So my wife will probably give me a hard time, but I want to have people over for dinner. Want to go over to people's houses for dinner. Want play dates for the kids. I want the kids to play in groups and to run around and run a bit of riot. I want to give more than I take. And that's a really tough one because you do need to balance taking care of yourself in the context of taking care of others. But if we all give 2 and take 1, that's going to be net regenerative.
It was only through random conversation with someone locally who had said there had been a meeting about a wind farm. And we said, wind farm? We didn't see any wind farms. There were none to be seen. And so then I started to dig. And it turned out that this was a wind farm in development. They had already been building for 3 months. It was the biggest wind farm in the world. It was all really confusing to me. I'm in a natural place with Natura 2000 protected. Everyone talks about nature and how important nature is for health and well-being. And then there's this basically industrial power station over hundreds of square kilometers of forest. It just didn't make sense. And then I started digging. I removed the facades and I could see behind the curtain. And then I started seeing the money. This money thing that I had tried to run away from. These people are everywhere. This is a systemic corruption. And that's why I persisted with you. And when people listen to our conversation and see the broader story, they can start recognizing those patterns in their own lives.
Hey Alex, this is Marijn. I think we should do the story together. Well, justice is an easy word to pronounce, but can be a hassle to receive when you're alone, right? So, yeah, I'll be on my way.
Hey Marijn, thanks for the message. This is, this is a big risk in certain respects, but a risk worth taking. This is, this movement that's rising, a big, a positive system that's trying to reclaim this world for the better. And it is, I've just had lots of bad experiences with these, people in the old system. They're not ready to be woken up, and they all become, violent and negative and destructive. And I really just want these people all to, to have their aha moment and to rise up in a positive way. Okay, anyway, let's speak on Friday.
So, there we are in nature. What does nature mean for you?
Nature for me it's the foundation of everything. I am nature. Everything is nature. So what was already there that we didn't create that makes us special. And this place for me is much, much closer to nature than where I came from when I was in London. And now, I hear so much about climate change and nature, but I don't necessarily disagree with that. It's just the order. It should be nature first, and then, we deal with what's left if there's still a climate problem afterwards. I just don't understand why we're so focused on climate and the solutions are destroying nature. We almost treat the climate like a living thing, but it's not alive.
What do you mean?
Well, if you think about it, if you take care of nature, nature gives back. You grow a tree, it will provide you food and shelter. It provides our basic human needs. The weather doesn't do that. Climate doesn't do that. It's a facilitator, maybe. It's one of the inputs. But ultimately, it's nature that you need to take care of, because that's what takes care of us.
How do you see the solution?
Look, what I have here was what I thought was better. I thought you go to a place where you live with less, you're closer to nature, you do a bit more work, but that work is for yourself. You're no longer working for the corporation, and you do it in a nature sympathetic way. You're living in nature, you're living with nature. Everything you do with consideration for nature, and you do it in a community with other people. So, coming from a city where I lived for 20 years and I knew no one. I knew my colleagues at work, but I didn't know any of my neighbors. Certainly I couldn't rely on any of them. And then suddenly to come here, where, if you don't work together, you could die, freeze in the winter or something. Yeah, that's what I think the solution is it's actually going back to nature. I'm no different than a typical person living in a big city, but now I am. I'm myself again. In the city, I wasn't me. I was a product of the system. I was a slave to my job, to materialism, to ego. And out here, I look, a lot of the time I look very natural. And, to be able to just spend some time not having to stress about things that don't matter. You know, nature matters.
But windmills aren't bad, right?
Well, I'm not against the wind. We've always used the wind, you know, thousands of years for sailing and mechanical movements. I just have something against using it really badly and in a way that actually makes the problem worse than actually fix it. A wind turbine's made of plastic. You need to use a big area of nature to make electricity. So the wind turbines are just another inefficient tool to exacerbate our electricity problem. Once a wind turbine's been put in an ecosystem, that ecosystem's broken. You know, it will never be its full potential.
But somehow oil plants are doing the same, isn't it?
You're right. An oil plant done badly is doing the same. But if you think about it, an oil plant takes a smaller amount of space. It can be put somewhere for a long period of time. And if we spent the money to do it properly, you know, a lot of our industrial infrastructure would not damage nature the way that, you know, it does now. So rather than putting up wind farms, I would argue we should be improving the quality and technology of our existing infrastructure. This place is untouched in a way, but they're filling it full of turbines. No people, no animals. The only things that can really survive in a wind farm and thrive are machines. So I'm asking myself, are we solving for machines or for humans and nature? So basically they're giving it a death sentence.
It's old family property, a couple of 100 years back. To the farm there is about 10 hectares of fields around here. I'm managing the forest. Last autumn I got a very big surprise walking there on the property with the beautiful mosses and the old forest that we kept. And out of the fog I started to see some new creatures. It was like steel buildings, and then I saw it was huge windmills. Before 2019 they were not there.
And you didn't know anything about the wind industry before?
Triggered by this, I started to study the issue.
But do you think one day wind energy can become a solution?
My answer is no, definitely no. I don't see a future with windmills. As traveling around the world and working in the forest sector, I have enjoyed where they put windmills farms in cooperatives or in rural areas and so on, Africa and Southeast Asia and so on. But when they started to be these huge parks into the national grid, I don't understand. The problem I see is a global problem, because studying this from scratch, the mining and the refining and the production and the fabrication of the windmills and all these metal materials that is needed consumes a huge amount of energy, which is 100% fossil. These rare metals are to a big extent Chinese. They are dominating the market. And now people around the world are looking for new mining to assure or safeguard their supply of these metals. So we are going from a fossil society to a metal society. And I don't believe it's the right thing.
Swedish people are very nature-friendly people. They're destroying the nature for both humans and animals. And and I have been there since I was a little kid. I know this place. I love that place, and now when I see how they are destroying it, it makes me sad.
How do you think it's destroying?
Yeah, they are placing these monster turbines in a quiet area. There's only forest. You don't hear any other sounds than the wind and the birds and maybe some trucks, some cars, but it's a very quiet place. There's no city environment. And I think the government now knows that these people are raising against it. I think it's a big problem for the government. Now they want to remove the kommunala veto. Every commune has their right to say no to wind farms. But now the government wants to remove it. But many people are scared, especially here in Jämtland. I think.
Wherefore?
I think people are scared for authorities and for the government, for the big companies. I think people are told to shut up.
I'm really, really excited in a way because our court case has been brought forward. Hopefully that'll take place around the 30th of November. We could stop the wind farm. That the people who are doing it, that we've identified that the fraud is happening all over the place and they're all being caught with their trousers down. You know, they've become so brash that, and so audacious that, they started to make mistakes.
You are one of Alexander's lawyers. It's quite a brave action to challenge wind farms as a private person. You're fighting against big corporations involving millions of dollars. Why do you believe in this case?
Alexander has identified an error in the environmental legal system, and by trying to solve this with legal tools, then we have discovered further errors. These errors that is hard to catch legally, and that is basically because the environmental code in Sweden and the environmental legal process is based on the trust of the developers. And besides that, the legal force of a permit is strong, and the public interest is in the hands of the authorities. And this is one of the big problems that we are meeting and struggling with.
I just got an email from my lawyers talking about challenges in accessing justice in the Swedish legal system. We've been highlighting the fact that they've been committing fraud and doing illegal activities, but the courts have not been giving us access. And actually it's reached the point now that they're just dismissing our cases, citing the fact that we as citizens don't have the legal right to question permits issued by the government, or even really to question the government at all. And so it's super strange if we don't have access to justice. How is the government accountable if citizens can't hold it to account?
I mean, we have all the evidence, but if the evidence doesn't even make it into the courts, it's as if our evidence didn't exist.
There are some big system shifts ahead of us. And they're pushing the narrative towards green renewables. How do you see this green wonderland they are creating from out of a juristic point of view?
I'm painfully aware of the climate changes and that we are standing in front of a crisis that claims actions. And I fully support the idea of green electricity, of course. The problem is that there is no such thing as green electricity as long as the production is done at the cost of the land, the livelihood, and the culture of the indigenous people.
Wow, they're massive.
Wind turbines are surprising machines. You know, I'm an engineer by degree, so I used to love these things. But you know, each turbine takes about 30 truckloads to get here. Steel towers, plastic blades. The blades of a turbine actually are a little bit like an airplane wing, but they're made with layers and layers of bisphenol A plastic, usually around a core of carbon fiber or balsa wood from the Amazon. And then on the outside they put some kind of an epoxy paint or something along those lines. Actually, over time they degrade, just like a propeller on a boat or a propeller on a plane. So over the life of a turbine, they're throwing out kilos and tons of microplastics. These turbines are 140 meters up to the generator, and then each blade is approximately 80 meters long, weighing 20 tons. The generator on top is probably another 60 tons. There's about 100 or 120 tons, so the equivalent of maybe 120 cars on top of this steel tower. And then what lurks beneath is a massive raft of concrete. Thousands of tons of concrete down there, massive hole. And you know, this is what they call progress. It's always carbon dioxide, no talk about poisoning the planet through heavy metals, no talking about poisoning the planet through plastics. You know, if you stop burning fossil fuels but you keep making plastics, you still kill the planet. It's crazy, the insanity. Yeah, so you can just see the scale.
These steel towers are being produced in China. The reason? It's cheap. They're manufactured in coal-fired steel plants, as we're being told, not so environmental friendly. Made in China and shipped in large cargo ships all the way to Sweden. Driven hundreds of kilometers through the forest and finally be constructed to last 20 years. Just to produce some electricity. And all the energy that went into it could be used for other things.
You know, this is the reality of wind farms. Devastation. Clearfeld. Up. This is wind farms. I just thought you'd like to see how they line them up. Line them up, cut them down. Rows and rows. Ready for the machines to come and collect them to be liquefied, shredded, whatever they get used for. And you can see they're gonna be blasting this out. Ooh, that's scary. Those are all explosive holes. And as you can see, you know, this isn't pretty. But if it's hidden away and people don't see it, people don't have to deal with it. This used to be the top of a hill. They blasted it away with great violence. You know, one of the things about wind farms that I'm learning is that there's a lot of violence involved in wind power. Starting from how it's made, through to where the minerals come from that they use in the supply chains, through to those who speak out, questioning whether this makes sense.
It's not a surprise. Windmills heavily rely on critical minerals. Neodymium, praseodymium, and dysprosium. And these rare earth elements rely on volatile and Chinese concentrated supply chains. It delivered 70% of the global demand in 2018. The good news? The Chinese market will go wild. The bad news? It's damaging a lot more than it will fix.
内蒙古的包头是中国最大的稀土生产基地。尽管稀土是珍贵的矿产资源，但是污染危害性却非常大。
The environmental impact of the extraction is estimated to be more damaging than fossil fuel extraction due to the toxic effluent emissions and waste generated from the intensive mining activity. Tons of radioactive waste is generated as a result of the refinement of the minerals. It has impacted the access to fresh water and food production in local communities surrounding the mines. In some regions, vegetation has stopped growing. Cattle have died from toxins in the soil and drinking water has been contaminated. But there's more. Windmills also need cobalt. A lot. Again, a rare mineral. 70% of the world's supply comes out of the cobalt mines of the Democratic Republic of the Congo. You know, that African country, which strangely enough, is in a bloody conflict for generations. To say it in less words, we're creating a bit of a mess. And no, we're not saving the planet with it.
You know, you're in the city, in your comfortable space, and you don't know what's going on in the middle of the forest.
When I was sitting in my office in London, I used to finance wind farms, and I believed in this, but I didn't know. And you know, as soon as I got more information and I started looking behind the propaganda, I couldn't believe it. I had cognitive dissonance, and I never thought I would be that kind of person who would just ignore something. So then I went into it, and you know, I've come into these wind farms now. I've looked at the devastation. I've spoken to the people who build them. They even admit that this is ridiculous, but they're getting paid and they've got bills to pay, so they just go along with it. But at some point we're all going to look back and say, why were we such idiots?
So yeah, this should save the planet.
You know, if this saved the planet, sign me up. I'd grab a shovel. I'd be digging here. But now that I know that this is actually going to destroy the planet, I'm raising the alarm. You know, every time I go out and talk to someone, I'm trying to make them convince me that this makes sense. No one's convinced me yet. Let me give you an overview of what I like to call the front line. I live here, Boyavatnet. There were some wind farms when I first arrived here, but I didn't see them because they were hidden quite far away. Yeah? And then I discovered that there were a total of 10 wind farms around me. And then the first one that I discovered by accident, which was Björkvatnet, is here. I have a court case against that in the Supreme Court. But then there's also Höxjön. This one is owned by Jamkraft and Persson Invest. I have a court case against them as well. But there are a number of other wind farms, and they all seem to be coming closer and closer to Boyavatnet. It's like an army marching closer and closer. And I had to ask myself, why? Why here? Why so many wind farms? All these companies wanting to build wind farms here, where it's not windy, but it's remote. So I wondered, is this really about saving the climate, or could there be a different motivator? So this is Björkvatnet, 33 turbines, and it's being built by a company called Infravia, French private equity house. They talk about this as being their gift to the world. You know, it's going to save the planet, going to save climate. What's a French company doing
in the remote forests of Sweden. However, you can't build a wind farm on your own. And it turns out that this wind farm was originally developed by General Electric, just that little company from America that needed a place to launch their new prototype mega turbine. And they found a remote place in the middle of the Swedish forest to do that. Of course, they couldn't build it alone. So they found a company called Stenger and Ibsen, which is a Danish company. They came here, not with a scalpel, you know, because this is delicate forest, and actually it's peat forest, and peat is so important if you care about the climate. It's also so important if you care about the environment. But they came here with basically a sledgehammer and a chainsaw and just hacked up this place. Of course, you can't build a wind farm without someone to take the electricity, and in this case, the poster child is Google. They are going to save the world with a wind farm. Why do they need it? Oh, well, Google's building a new data center for the cloud in Finland, 1,000 kilometers away.
So the electricity here will partly go to Finland?
Yes, most of it will go to Finland. And why is it going to Finland? Because it's cheap.
Why doesn't it stay in Sweden?
Sweden doesn't need it. Sweden met its 2030 renewable energy target in 2018. This place is full of hydroelectric from 1930 and 1940s. So they don't need the electricity. And actually most people don't realize that a lot of wind farms and other renewable energy projects are to feed new infrastructure that was never there before. So it's not even fixing, you know, the existing energy. It's all new. But of course, Infravia can't build it on its own. Infravia doesn't have any money. They're just a manager. So they have to find people. They have a fund in Luxembourg because it's good for tax, you know, tax avoidance. And they found investors who are happy to put their money into Luxembourg to get a tax efficient way of doing business. This wind farm will never make money. You know, these wind farms are designed to make losses, so they don't pay taxes here. They take all that money to Luxembourg, so you can get, you know, you can get the maximum profits. Who did they find? They found Munich Re, one of the largest reinsurance companies in the world that just talks about how great it is for the environment. They're from Germany. Of course, Munich Re's not alone. This is a super secret Luxembourg fund, as most Luxembourg funds are. You know, you don't want to know who's tax avoiding because it doesn't look so good. But they got themselves the Oslo City Pension Fund from Norway, W&W, a pension and insurance company in Germany, and finally a Dutch company, the Physiotherapist Pension Fund, invested in the remote forests of Sweden. I wrote to all of them and said, hey, do you know what people are doing with your money? You know, maybe they're not telling you the truth. None of them really cared. So, you know, of course you can't build a wind farm without banks. BNP Paribas, a top bank. More banks, Dutch bank, ABN AMRO. Another French bank, SocGen. And finally, I discovered that the fund in Luxembourg has an SDG-linked equity facility. That means they borrow the money, you know, even for the little bit that they're supposed to put in themselves. I said, yes, HSBC, the bank I worked for. I wrote to my old boss and I said, hey, you guys are the top, you know, the pinnacle of sustainability, an SDG-linked, so Sustainable Development Goals linked facility. What if they're lying and it's not sustainable? They basically said, hey, you know, we're not really that bothered what they do on the level. We just take an average and, you know, we just look at it from a, you know, an umbrella perspective. So again, you know, no one cares about the detail. It's just about the profits and, you know, the image. And that really hurt. But of course, I thought, hey, you know, there's a United Nations of players here. The United Nations is actually involved. Infravia proudly wears the United Nations Principles for Responsible Investment badge, which is supposed to be the gold standard that this investor actually cares and that he's honorable and trustworthy with regards to his sustainability standards. I wrote to them and said, hey, Infravia is misusing your badge of honor. And the CEO, Fiona Reynolds, came back and said, look, we spoke to the company. They said everything's okay. They did their paperwork on time and they paid their fee. So therefore, we're not going to do anything else. I understand there's a lot of money at play here, but all of this just seems to be smoke and mirrors. Sustainability is just distracting you. You hear the words, you don't actually look at the detail. And the only conclusion I could come to, based on all of these players, what they're doing, looking at the projects, looking at the actual impacts, the benefits, it's just all about money.
But this whole thing makes you mad, right?
It makes me so angry. I don't have the words to describe it.
But angry to whom?
I'm angry at everyone. I'm angry at the company that's building the wind farms. I'm angry at the companies that make the turbines. I'm angry at the politicians and the regulators who gave the permits. I'm angry at the NGOs who tell us that, these turbines will save the world. And then I'm angry at, Greta, Al Gore, all these celebrities who could do so much good, and they're saying wind turbines are good.
What I find quite confusing and complex is that, what I think is that the science is being hijacked in a too early stage by NGOs who can use it for their own, profits. The NGOs are hijacking politics, and the politics and NGOs are being hijacked by corporates. So it's very confusing and complex, to blame someone, right?
It is, but what you just described me was following the money. Money is driving this. But equally, I'm just trying to figure out, yes, money corrupts, but how can it corrupt so many people? These people can't all be bad. I don't understand what they're thinking. There's so many passionate people. I look at WWF or Greenpeace, or here in Sweden they're called Skydskogen, or the Sweden National Conservation Society, or Greta. These are passionate people. They're just shouting about the wrong things. I've tried many other options. I've tried fighting. I've tried the courts. I've tried complaining. The only thing I haven't tried yet is actually going up to these people and asking them openly and honestly questions about why they are doing what they're doing.
So we went to Stockholm to ask questions.
Oh, hey! Tack! Oh, God. Thank you very much.
Today, SCA is Europe's largest private forest owners, and it is the forest, 2.6 million hectares of forest land, an area about the size of Belgium. That is the core of the company, and around this resource of well-managed, well-growing forests, we have built an industry and other activities designed to create as much value as possible in and from these forests. Our ambition is to manage these forests so that they should be as rich in timber, in biodiversity, and in experiences tomorrow as they are today. At the same time, we see these forests as a key resource when it comes to combating climate change.
You spoke about SCA and the value of the forests, the trees, I guess the fact that they grow on their own with careful stewardship. How does that connect with wind power?
we have two value streams connected with this land resource. First, we manage and use the forests. And when a tree is harvested, we make sure that all of it is put to good use. The other value stream is that our land resource also is well positioned for wind power. For historic reasons, SCA owns a lot of land on the ridges between the rivers, and these areas make good sites for windmills.
A wind farm in a forest is a degraded land use for many reasons. How can SCA manage that conflict without being true to itself? You say you want to improve the biodiversity, and then the second pillar is industrializing the forests.
Most of the forest is outside of these wind parks and is unaffected by them. And then within the wind park, the distances between these wind turbines is a matter of kilometers. I myself hunt in an area which is a wind park, and from most perspectives, the forest in the wind park is a forest. There are roads there are wind turbines there, but the area that they sort of make use of or industrialize, if you want to use that term, is fairly small. So most of the land, even within the wind park, is still forest. And there are some challenges, for example, when it comes to some birds of prey and so on, but for most animals and for all plants, the wind turbines have no effect whatsoever.
Tack så mycket för det. Då går ordet till interpellanten Alexandra Anstrell, Moderaterna. Varsågod.
Tack fru talman. Tack minister för svaret. För mig så är det väldigt viktigt att belysa både för- och nackdelar med en utbyggd vindkraft. Det handlar om vad det betyder i ett såväl större perspektiv när det gäller...
Alexander, you asked some critical questions to the parliament about the construction of wind power in Sweden. Well, what exactly did you ask?
I asked the minister if they have research about microplastic, or if they have enough research to know that we are taking the right steps into the future. But I didn't actually got any good answers on that one. They said we have research, but not so much research. So I think about microplastic and about animals, but mostly the steps into the future. We have to put the effects of the wind energy to what are we doing to our nature and to our people and to the animals. And I didn't got any good answers there.
Does it give you concerns?
Yes, because I would like to take decisions that I know are built on research, and not just that it could be good. We have to know it's good as much as we can know, and I think we can have some more research on this one.
It's quite a romantic vision, people living in nature, in the country, being free. How do you see that conflicting with an uncertainty regarding the build out of wind power, which clearly will conflict with many of these natural places that people may want to move to?
There is a clear conflict there. When we look at the expansion of wind power and which areas are suitable and not suitable, we do it mainly from a nature conservation perspective. There's plenty of organizations which drive a kind of push against wind power based on social impacts. This makes my view ugly, or I can hear the noise, which I fully respect, but it's not part of our job. When we go into the wind power debate, we do it because we know that we will have to get our electricity from somewhere in order to get rid of all of the fossil fuels. So that's the climate aspect of it. And at the same time, we want to do this without contributing to further degradation of biodiversity. And that means that we have to be a little bit more pragmatic, right? So we see that there is a need to build wind power. Let's make sure that it's built in areas with lower biodiversity sensitivity. And that's possible.
Is a forest with a wind farm equivalent to a forest without a wind farm?
There are definitely differences. I mean, sort of the share of the area that is covered by roads is higher in a wind park than it is in a forest outside of a wind park, even though there are forest roads there as well. And bear in mind that the share of the forest that is in wind parks is very small compared to the rest of the forest. So I could stop there and say that it's so small it has no significant effect on the large forest landscape. But if there are local effects that from one or other reason would be severe, one good thing with wind turbines is that you can put them down.
In any case, it's good to know we have that option, right?
Yeah. What is the purpose and mission of the Vindkraftcentrum?
One of the purposes that we have is to help to reach the goal of 100% renewable energy to 2040. And we also have a goal to help develop the village where the wind power are established. Yes.
And why is that so important?
It creates new jobs, the wind power, for people living around there during the operation and during the construction. It is important to reduce emissions, so we need wind power. Yes.
Everyone does a piece of the puzzle. Vindkraftcentrum, you're only focused on the economic side of a project, local development benefit. You don't look at any of the issues around noise or health or nature or those types of things. You're really about an economic development agency focused on using wind to help
the
local
people living there.
economic development. Yeah. If the paper says we will create 20 jobs, which the developer might say, but then it turns out that the 20 jobs are foreign workers. So no one then checks if the Landstyrelsen, did those 20 jobs actually, did they actually happen? And that's why, and this is one question that you don't have to answer if you don't want to, but who checks that the developers actually do what they promise at the beginning?
I actually don't know, but maybe you can talk to Torbjörn. I think he maybe knows. He's my boss. Yeah.
Okay. Let's see. Okay, here we go.
Vindkraftcentrum, Torbjörn Maxvik. Jag kan inte svara just nu. Kolla in ett meddelande eller skicka sms eller mail. Ciao.
Okay. Hello, Torbjörn. My name is Alexander Pohl. We had spoken to Linnea, and she had one or two questions that she referred back to that we should speak to you. Hey, Torbjörn. It's Alexander Pohl again, just trying to catch you to finish up this interview. Hey, Torbjörn. It's Alexander Pohl trying to catch you for a third time. It would be great to finish up the interview we started with Linnea. I hope to speak to you soon. Hej då!
The region of Jämtland has taken a proactive role in implementing wind power through the launch of the Power Region Initiative. Wind power is an industrial solution, and to be honest, with some negative impacts on the environment. And as the Landstyrelsen is responsible for permitting and monitoring the construction of the wind farms, how does it ensure that these impacts are understood and monitored?
Ansökan om tillstånd vid en etablering, den prövas ju enligt miljöbalken. Och den säger då att man måste genomföra ett samråd. Och det sker tillsammans med Länsstyrelsen, med kommunen, enskilda personer och allmänhet och organisationer och myndigheter som kan bli berörda. Och då meddelar de sitt beslut och det vinner laga kraft om det inte överklagas. Det är väldigt vanligt att det överklagas och den processen tar flera år.
Does that mean that old promises can be changed because of new standards?
Under den här processens gång så är det väldigt ofta så att tekniken har utvecklats. Det har hänt ganska mycket. Det kan ha tillkommit ny kunskap och även då ny teknik hos själva vindkraften.
So, round can become square and cheap can become expensive. Saving the climate can become saving the corporates. Or better said, all this is a shot in the dark. But hey, we're doing good, right?
So they went in 2008, in the financial crisis, they went to the Landstyrelsen. They said, hey, can we build a wind farm with these turbines? And back then, everyone was desperate and Klimat was new and stuff. So they said, okay, hey, you can do that. Then in 2015, they said, we're really sorry. We're not going to make any money with this little stupid turbine. Now the turbines can be much taller. So can we put it on a stick and then make it much taller? But by the way, don't worry about the new turbines because they're so much higher. The birds will fly underneath. It's much further away from the ground. Don't really need to worry about it. So they said, okay, you can do that. They had to do some studies, but of course the company pays a company to do the study for them. So the studies are always, everything is great. And then when they built the wind farm, they took this here. So they went from this to this. Yeah. And they never got an approval for this. If they would have asked for this at the beginning, they would have said, you guys are idiots. And so here now you can see what the wind industry has given the local people. This is called Vindhus. This is like a little grill place where you can sit outside on the island. They even splashed out for the outhouse in the background, so you can even take a shit. And then, and then here you go. Oh, how beautiful. Village. What do you look out onto? Ah, and then, yes, the wonderful view of all the wind turbines, which will soon be repeated across all of this. So this little donation from the wind farm money becomes an insult as they can sit and watch their village be overrun and destroyed by wind turbines. Hair's not looking the best, but hey, that's natural.
Det är riktigt. Är det så ni ser på det? De flesta som är här? Där är en, nu är några här. Kom igen. Ja.
Tack. Jag heter Alexander Pohl. I have to ask my question in English because I've come from Jämtland where we have the same
Förstår du vad de säger?
Yeah. My question is, how will these wind farms fix climate change when they don't calculate the CO2 that they're going to save?
Vi kommer till det lite senare bara. Du ville säga något. Vi kommer till den frågan senare. Var det du? Ja.
Nej, men alltså det är ju en rådgivande... The answer? We don't know. But all experiments are allowed in a global crisis. And everybody wants to do good. And do business. And that is double trouble. You had involvement in the earlier days of helping Greta Thunberg build her awareness platform. Could you tell me a little bit about it? Because it's been seen as a pivotal turning point in the climate debate.
Yes, so I mean, what we want to do is to help everyone that are acting for the climate. It could be a business leader running a large corporation. It could be a 15-year-old girl outside the Swedish Riksdag. I came to hear about this young girl that was supposed to start something outside the Swedish Parliament. So I wanted to go there and see what it was all about. And I was expecting something very differently. I was expecting kind of a group of kids that were going to demonstrate, shouting, angry with signs and all that activist stuff. But it was nothing like that. It was only a young girl sitting at the side on the street. And I just stood there before approaching her, like taking in the situation, because it was so clear that everyone on the street, they didn't even look at her. They just walked by, carrying on with their business as usual. And there you have this child with a sign and the weight on the shoulder screaming, "We need to change." So the Greta phenomenon is both very much timing and the picture of a child telling the truth.
Do you therefore think that we need to have more friction and more challenging?
No. I don't believe in that at all. We can't portray people like enemies, like portraying big oil as enemies or portraying Jeff Bezos as enemies. I don't think he's an evil person. I don't just think that he could do better. I don't think we could have a bad person change if we're portraying them as an enemy. Maybe they're not going to change anyway, but if you take a big corporation, it's based upon their employees. You have 1,000 employees, and that means that if an organization is doing something wrong, the only ones that are going to change that organization is the people inside. And if you're portraying all of them as bad people, they will be bad people. If you instead are trying to nudge them to change, and if you see someone inside doing something great and helping that person, you will have a much, much higher probability to change that organization, to not be bad anymore. I mean, organizations don't want to be evil, but if they are evil, there are still a lot of people working for them, try to help the good ones win inside that company. So we don't have time to portray people, businesses as our enemies. We need to talk to even dictatorships. We need to have them to do this because we don't have time to replace them. We don't have time for war. We don't have time for revolution. We don't have that time. We must act within how the world looks today, with the leaders we have today, and we need them to change. And if we are making enemies out of people and having a big conflict, I don't believe that will help.
That's an interesting point of view. But it has to be said, this "we don't have time" thing somehow forced me into a one-way direction. I'm meeting Jens Orbeck, Executive Director of Global Challenges Foundation. We're helping out to meet against the global catastrophic risks. They like to reform organizations as WHO or United Nations as more powerful crisis platforms. Or better said, a one-world governance. Jens, why are we needing more power to these organizations?
Because if you ask people on the globe what are the biggest risks towards humanity, they will answer climate changes. And we have a Security Council that doesn't deal with climate changes. So in that sense, some of these very good institutions are getting a little bit irrelevant. And in order for them to get relevant, they have to handle these issues as well, I would say.
The United Nations is not an elected body. Is there some type of model Are you looking at reforming these organizations and turn it into democratic local citizen-led organizations?
Yes, they need to, because if you have some legal power, you have to have legitimacy. Today, the Security Council has legal mandates, so it could also be that they expand their legal matters into other security risks. But if you want to make bigger shifts, you also need to look into the constitutions. And if you would have some sort of executive organ, this organ also have to have legitimacy, and then we need to talk about the development of the General Assembly, so it's more mandated in a democratic way.
And the reason I ask the question, because it feels sometimes in society today, the parties have to stick to a certain position, because they would be showing weakness or some type of, I guess you could say, non-purse motivation. And if you scale that to a global level, that builds in a lot of extra risks that you may end up going down to the root of. Asbest is, let's say that everyone bought asbest was the best viral target, and they put it in everything from floor cars to God knows.
Yeah, I think we will always be wrong. And I mean, if somebody before said that the earth was round, he was so wrong that he had to be killed. Because he challenged the scientific thoughts at that time. So I think we need a political system that can adjust, and a movement that could move with the different knowledge. So, but at the same time, we then need some place to discuss that. And I think democracy is the least bad system that we have found so far. Because it could have a freedom of speech, it could have some sort of freedom of research, freedom of assembly, and so on. So I think that system has a better possibility in the long run to adjust to new knowledge. I think authoritarian system can do things fast in a way if it's good for their leaders. But in the long run, I think we need democratic institutions to adapt to new knowledge.
You made some very good points about a direct democracy. On a global basis, the individual can plummet to insignificance or can be over-prioritized. Does the Global Challenge Foundation have any view about the value of the individual within global governance?
Yes, very much. I think that for me, living here close to the Baltic Sea, if I see that the sea is polluted here from a neighbor country, I would like to have a possibility to go to court with that country, maybe with help from my country, to see how could this dispute be carried out. We are not doing that today, and the Baltic Sea is dying. And sometimes when you look at global decisions, you think they take away possibilities for individuals. I would say it's often the other way around. Like, for instance, the human rights that we have, freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, they give freedoms for individuals, not only to move around on the globe, but also to affect their policies. So I think that the policy decision on the global level, to a large extent, should secure the freedom of the individuals. But at the same time, you as an individual need some sort of place on the global level also to secure your future. And if decisions will affect you, you need some sort of democratic path also to have an influence on that. But to say, I decide myself, so I stay in my village, I don't think that's the right answer today, because there is a road from that village, there is air coming to that village, there is water coming into that village, that you as an individual also need to have some sort of influence on.
Global governance a good idea? I don't know. Because who at the end decides whether there is a crisis? Based upon what? And who's steering it? How many rights do we have to go against the narrative? Because a crisis don't have time for a democratic system. You know, all people we met so far were pretty interesting, but all conversations we had were sort of based upon the premise that climate change will kill us. Therefore, we need to get rid of fossil fuels and we need to build a lot of renewable energy, right?
It's true, though the fundamental underlying question is, do we need all this energy and electricity in the first place? You know, I've got enough electricity. Do you have enough electricity?
No.
I think most citizens have enough electricity, and even if you go to the developing world, they probably have enough electricity. So who needs all this extra electricity? You know, it's not necessary. It's just factories and heavy industry that are building things that people don't need to drive the capitalist model, which is owned by, just a few people. So I do get frustrated by the fact that they're telling us that we're all going to die in response to something that no one has actually asked if we actually need. Well, and people talk about putting a price on carbon, a price on nature, but that means that you treat them like commodities, right? As long as you can pay the price, you can use it. And actually, this using and abusing, we're raping nature. It's disgusting, and no price can make that okay. But we need to figure out how to get these individuals to no longer be motivated by money. Greta, before you get started, I'm doing a documentary film to save forests. I've come from Jämtland up north. You've spent almost 3 years now raising the alarm, and you've met Obama, you've met all these politicians, you've met a lot of the World Economic Forum, etc. I'm proud of you, and I think that you've raised the alarm. What do you think is the next step? Because we know who's to blame. We know we've got the climate and ecological emergency, which I call a resource consumption, land use, and a pollution emergency, but people kind of get confused by that. What do you think is the next step?
Raising awareness.
Raising awareness?
That's our goal, and we still haven't achieved that. We have the level of awareness right now is close to non-existing.
Yeah.
In order to make any changes whatsoever, we need to raise the level of awareness. Because if we don't have people who are aware and who are pushing for change, then we won't see any change.
That is such a good point. Hey, good stuff. Hey, the other conspiracy, the other fraud, the other exploitation. Where there's fear, there's money. I'm a 20-year banker trying to tell the truth. Hey! Shadi! Shadi! Whoa! Hey! Hey! No! Hey! No! Hey! 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 Something! Hey! Hey! Don't do this! Hey! Hey! How you doing? Hey! Hey! No! I'm scared! Hey! Please let me go! No! I don't want to go! I just want to go! I just want to go! We are here for peace and freedom!
moment a democratic global governance has selected the crisis and the route, it starts to protect it and sees the public doubt as a threat to disrupt, on which totalitarianism follows.
Hello.
I'll be interpreting for you this morning. I am sworn to silence.
Okay.
Och vi kommer att påbörja förhöret idag och förhöret påbörjas 11:19.
We're going to start our questioning and it will take place at 19 klockan 19.
Wait. Can I just ask a few questions first? I don't know who you are. I don't have any evidence of who this is. I don't have a telephone number. I briefly got the name of the person who's supposedly calling me. Can I please get details of who you are, what evidence I have of who you are, because I feel very uncomfortable being called out of the blue on an unlisted number with someone suggesting they are the police.
You are suspected of a crime called refusing resistance.
Why is this taking place 3 months after whatever we're referring to?
Because it takes time for us to investigate minor things. Hopefully we can finish this incident today.
I have to admit, no one has told me what my rights are. I feel very uncomfortable because of the experience that I had and the fact that the police is now accusing me of a crime when I was not arrested.
Excuse me. The police was not accusing. If I translated wrong, it was a suspicion, not an accusing.
Indeed, but based on what happened, if I am now being suspected of a crime, that makes me feel very uncomfortable and I don't know what my rights are. So I would not like to proceed without knowing what my rights are, having appropriate representation. And I would prefer to do this in person so that I can I know what's going on. But I do not feel comfortable to do this type of thing on the telephone.
So you will have your rights all according to the system, the plan, once we start the questioning.
But we haven't started the questioning yet.
No, he informed exactly when it would start in the beginning of the conversation.
Exactly. So I do not feel comfortable being questioned at present because I was not aware that this was a formal questioning. I do not, as I said, I do not feel comfortable answering questions under these circumstances. What are my options?
I'm taking charge here. I'm going to start, and first I'm going to inform you about your rights.
No, I do not feel comfortable with this. I will come to Stockholm if I have to and sit in a room with you. the police treated me very badly. I filed a complaint about the treatment. I feel that I'm being treated badly again here. It suggested that this is a minor situation. I don't understand why I'm being forced into answering questions that I don't feel comfortable because I don't understand the situation.
You will be able to express your discomfort during this questioning.
However, like I said, I don't want to be questioned like this. This experience it was one of the scariest things I have ever experienced, and certainly did not expect it of the police in Sweden.
Okay, this is the fact. You are suspected of a crime.
Och så är situationen, och det är ingenting som du kan bestämma eller göra någonting åt, utan vi är här för att utreda det här brottet.
And there's nothing you can do to decide about the formalities. Hello?
I'm not able to take this call. I have to go. I can't handle this. This is too much for me. I'm sorry. You're going to have to call me back. I can't take this. Okay. Bye-bye. Three months later, they call you out of the blue, say you are suspected of a crime. I never experienced anything like that. 6 guys in gas masks. Don't even say anything, in silence grab you from behind. They don't speak. They pin me down for 15 minutes, handcuff me brutally, smash my everything that I had with me. They treat me like I'm a piece of dirt. And all I did was just get freaked out by 6 guys in gas masks. And now they're calling me and say that I have no rights. I had to hang up because I can't deal with that. If they want me, they can come and get me. But I mean, this is police brutality of the, intimidation, total intimidation. I can't talk to them.
Lawsuits, problems with the police. You lost friends. I mean, how far are you willing to go to, reach your own justice?
Yeah. I ask myself that pretty much every day now. It's really hard going, but I feel like if I don't give it one big push and I'm almost at the crest, either I'll find the truth and that will set me free, or, I gave it my best and I failed, and then I kind of just move on with my life. But I feel like I'm close. Hopefully I won't end up in jail, but that would be for reasons outside of my control. But one way or the other, I will end up somewhere.
You're hungry? Cool.
Our world is bleeding, and its future is at stake. We must build back better, but better for the good. Headwind to turn the tide, yes. Headwind to turn the tide, yes. Our world keeps spinning. It is time to pull the brake. We must come together